Hello, everyone. Welcome to From Startup to Sale, an MSP podcast by MSPs for MSPs. We are truly fortunate today to have Peter Kujawa, VP and GM of Service Leadership, one of the most amazing firms that if you've never heard of, then you are in real luck today. It's April 24th, 2024. And without further ado, Peter, please introduce yourself.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for having me on. That's quite an introduction, quite a setup. I gotta hopefully try to deliver on all of that. But yeah, I joined Service Leadership in late 2021, and so been here for 2.5 years. ConnectWise purchased Service Leadership in late 2020, and our founder, the great Paul Dipple, wanted to take a step back and be able to enjoy next stage in life and all of the good stuff that comes with selling your business. So Paul needed somebody to come in and continue the tradition with Service Leadership, and it was a really exciting opportunity for me. In late 2021, when I joined, October, when I joined ConnectWise and Service Leadership, I had been running an MSP since June of 2010. So for a little over 11 years. And part of what was really impactful on our business was in 2011, we discovered Service Leadership and we started to benchmark and pretty rapidly found a whole bunch of things that we were not doing right. And up until that time, we had been doing better, but to take a step back, I don't come from the tech industry. My background is a little different. Most of the MSP owners that I talk to, and it's changed a little bit. You're seeing a little bit more professional management brought in to run MSPs now as they're growing. But most of the guys that I talk to, most of the MSP owners, started out as really smart techs, and they were entrepreneurial and had some good customer relationships and decided to hang a shingle and start a business. So and then you had a few more customers. Pretty soon you need some help, and so you had some techs, and all of a sudden you have a real business. Um, my situation was different. I took over an MSP that had been around for quite a while, but was really struggling. The 12 months prior to me arriving, we had done 2.2 million in revenue and lost 1.5 million. And so the owner of the business wanted to make some dramatic changes. He was in his early 70s and wanted to be able to sell the business in a few years, and knew that he would only be able to sell it if it survived, and was in a position to sell. And I came in. My background is I was in the cell phone industry in the 90s when it was a land grab, and ran sales teams in multiple states, and got my experience in sales leadership and turnarounds there. Went back to law school, came out, and decided I liked running a business more than I liked working at a law firm. And ended up, really convoluted story I won't bore you with, but about 6 or 8 months later, I ended up as president of a financial technology firm that was more of a startup, and it was owned by an attorney, heavily regulated, really niche business within fintech, and was ended up being a great fit. I was there 7 years. We grew it from 3 customers and to 250 customers. I made it a nationwide powerhouse, and life was great. And all of a sudden, this opportunity to take over an MSP turnaround came along, and it was we wanted to move back to Western Wisconsin, where I live now, La Crosse. And I was kind of arrogant. I was 40 years old and had grown this fintech company, and had done some previous turnarounds, and thought, how hard can the IT business be? And as I think you know, and all those who run MSPs know, it's really tough. And so I quickly learned that, and about 8 months in, we were doing better. We were not losing as much. We had done some things to really turn the ship from a quality of deliverable standpoint, and our sales team right-sized, and some other changes we had to make early on. But we still weren't getting the kind of margins that I expected a business like ours to get. And I was at a conference in ironically, I was at a conference in early 2011, maybe CompTIA, and I happened to sit next to Arlen Sorensen. And so Arlen is pretty well known. He started HTG peer groups and ended up selling to ConnectWise. And and back in the day, we were not on ConnectWise Manage, and you had to be a member of one of Arlen's groups. And I said, shoot, this peer group concept really sounds good to me. And Arlen said, have you ever met a fellow named Paul Dipple? And I said, no. He said, well, Paul's groups are more agnostic on what products you're using, and why don't you give Paul a call? And I did, and it was really uh, changed the trajectory of our MSP. We went on to, as we benchmarked and joined a peer group, we went on to do an acquisition later that year. A year and a half later, we were acquired. By that time, we were profitable and had turned the corner on the business. We were about a $4.5 million business at that point, 32 employees. And over the years, went on to do a couple more acquisitions. We went on to grow significantly organically. And when I left in 2017 or 2021, we were a $17 million MSP with about 85 employees. And so it was a great ride, and wouldn't have been made possible without us figuring out where we were doing things right and where we were not doing things right, which benchmarking really helped us do.
The one thing I really want to point out to everybody who's listening, and this is a mistake I made as an MSP, the peer groups that are out there, companies like Service Leadership, companies like MSP Alliance, even Vistage and some of the other peer groups, I never felt like I needed them, and it was a mistake. Not associating yourself with other high-level business owners who help to hold you accountable for the things that need to be done and can provide the advice that you don't even know that you need until you get it is incredibly valuable. And so this is why I'm so excited to talk to Peter today. Peter, why don't you tell us a little bit about Service Leadership and what types of things you offer to MSPs and how embedded you are in the community?
Yeah, sure. So Service Leadership was founded on the premise that Paul Dipple had back 20 years ago, that there was a lack of objective data on the industry's performance, that the surveys that would come out tended to be done by vendors, and they had a specific agenda in mind. And even if that wasn't the case, even when somebody tried to do comparable financials, unless you have a normalized chart of accounts, you're really not comparing apples to apples. And so it just was really hard to get data on any sort of performance benchmarks back in the day. So Service Leadership was born to fill that void. And today, that's still the number one thing that we do. Every quarter, partners from all over the world in 10 different TSP business models, the two largest being MSPs and product centric, or VAR, also known. Um, every quarter, they put their financials and some operational data into our system. And every quarter, we run the data to see who's the best in class. And so our definition of best in class is really, really simple. It's who's the 25% most profitable based on adjusted EBITDA. And so we use that as our determination, because from our standpoint, you can move a lot of things around underneath the rug, and you can move cost from one bucket to another. You can move revenue. You can do a lot of things to make specific parts of your business look really good, but ultimately, all of those things come out in the wash. And so we look at who's the most profitable. We then go back and we extrapolate over 80 different KPIs, and we look at things like, what are they spending on sales or marketing as a percentage of gross margin? What's their service gross margin, product gross margin? What kind of productivity are they getting out of their service team? What kind of productivity do they get out of their sales engine? And how's their G&A expense? And so we look at all of those things, and we provide, it's an all new online interface where you load your data, and then you can view how you compare to yourself, historical performance, and see how you're trending. But you can also compare online and see how you're doing relative to the best in class. So you go in every quarter, you put your data in, and every quarter you are able to go in and see how you did. It's really granular. It shows you, and it's easy to follow. We use the red, green, yellow traffic light system to show where you're off or where you're doing well. And for me as a partner, that was every quarter I look forward to getting that data. Even when I intuitively felt like we had a good quarter or a bad quarter, I would learn so much more when I'd see the service leadership report.
That
So,
normalized chart of accounts, by the way, is available for free from the
yep.
service-leadership.com website. And one of the things that I try strongly to preach, and when I work with MSPs, I try and help MSPs understand that they should be ready for a sale in an emergency, and that there are things that they can do every single day as they operate to be ready. And one of those things is to establish that normalized chart of accounts, because it tells a story. If your books don't tell the story of how your company generates value, then they're not doing their job. And the normalized chart of accounts that's proposed by Service Leadership is an excellent start. And they've got a great document online that talks about exactly how to implement it and what's included in each category and why it's done. And this read alone will do more to set you on the right road toward creating value, even if you don't sign up for their services, which I also very, very strongly recommend. Sorry, Peter, please continue.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I agree. And by the way, we can come back to the subject, but you should always be running your business as if you're going to be selling it. And we certainly there's a long discussion in there, but yeah, we refer to it as the NSP COA, the Normalized Solution Provider Chart of Accounts. The NSP COA, I don't know any private equity buyer out there or any other anybody who does a lot of M&A for the industry who doesn't use or at least understand the NSP COA. It's become really the gold standard for chart of accounts in our industry. And that's part of the value of the data that we get is we just have such a large partner sample from all over the world that every quarter is putting their data into the system. There's nothing like it from a comparable data standpoint.
How many MSPs report to you at this point?
We don't, as a policy, we don't disclose sample sizes, not because they're small, but because it opens up a discussion that of, well, how many MSPs are in my town that I directly compete with that look exactly like me, that are in my exact target customer profile range and my exact size of revenue, right? Because those are the only ones I want to look at. It ultimately usually leads down that. So we don't disclose it, but we benchmark 3 different peer group communities, including IT Nation Evolve, which I believe is the largest peer group community worldwide. We benchmark, we have a large number of subscribers who subscribe just to benchmark. So it's a statistically significant sample in all the geos we operate.
Peter, are you tracking any sales numbers after a company sells? When I got my master's degree in finance, I was doing quite a bit of research on valuation and valuation nuances. So as you know, there are many types of managed services practices, and not all practices are created equal. The revenue, the profit from some practices, based on my experience working with other companies, is more valuable than the profit generated by certain other practices. And so I'm wondering whether you do track enterprise value on sale for the clients that you have.
So the answer would be sort of. We do track revenue trends, and we look, and we also every year we come out with our opinion on multiples, and so we look at one of those is based on valuations of multiples of different types of revenue, and so we have the ability to look at that. We also do separately track private equity backed MSPs, and so we report on those and the majority of their growth, while some of it's certainly organic, the majority of that has been acquisition based. So it's a mix after when we're looking at their data. Um, so we look at it in some different ways. And in fact, we're going to start a couple of quarters ago, we started to capture some nuance within the private equity model ownership of integrated and partially integrated. And we also are starting to track ESOPs. So the goal with all of those things is as we go forward, we should be able to have some even more granular reporting on not only the differences in the models over time, but we should be able to track the differences in the models after change. So if I go from privately held to private equity, well, if we know, as long as we know the quarter that that transition took place, then we can start to really report on what was your growth before and after? What was your profitability before and after? What did your service gross margin look like before and after? What were you spending on sales before and after, right? So over time, we do have some of that data and we do report on some of it now, but we're in the process of being able to add a lot more reporting on that.
I could get a whole nother master's degree just doing research on that data, I'm sure. Tell us a little bit about operational maturity levels and what it means to be a mature MSP.
Sure. So I hear the term being used a little bit in the industry of operational maturity level, but fun fact is service leadership actually trademarked that term about 11 years ago. And so in the context of a technology firm, Service Leadership, and now ConnectWise owns that trademark. Little trivia for you. So we talk about it OML on a scale of 1 to 5, and everybody starts out at OML 1, which is really the startup, just getting the business going phase. And you've owned some MSPs, so you remember what these days were like. It's every dollar is a good dollar. I just need some revenue to keep the lights on and be able to try to build a business. And so if you make it out of that phase, and frankly, most businesses don't. Most businesses that start out there, most startups fail. The percentages of success is a little higher in the managed service space than the general population, but nonetheless, it's really challenging. And so you're willing to make exceptions on pricing, you're willing to make exceptions on tech stack and what you're going to have to support. You're probably willing to make some customized offerings up on the managed service offerings. It's like whatever it takes, I got to get some revenue in the door. So if you do that and you're successful with it, you wake up in OML2, and now we've got to support all of these different customers on all of this different technology, and some of which may be profitable contracts, some of which maybe not, all these exceptions baked into those agreements. And so you wake up one day, and the good news is you survived OML1. The bad news is now you gotta support it. And our nickname for OML2 is the pit of despair. That it's a really tough place to live. It's hard, and every MSP who's been there knows how challenging that time is. That you don't have the standardization that you need to have. Your customers start getting pretty frustrated with your employees around this time. Your employees start getting pretty frustrated with you around this time, right? It's just you're probably not profitable. So this is when you start to say, are we ever going to turn the corner on this business? So if you keep your head down and you start to standardize your offerings and start to put into place some better business practices with running your MSP, you get to OML3, and at OML 3.1, 3.2, you're making some money. Your customers are probably renewing at a higher percentage, and life starts to get a little bit better. You just start to intuitively feel at your MSP like, all right, we're starting to get the hang of this thing. If you can get up to an OML 3.8 or 3.9, our data tells us that at that point, you're likely to be at best-in-class profitability, that you're building an MSP that will be really able to acquire and integrate future acquisitions into your platform. You're going to be really scalable, that overall you get up to 3.8, 3.9, 4, things are going really well at your business. So so we measure that. We have an online tool called Sleek, which is SLIQ, and Service Leadership came out with Sleek 10 years ago, as of last fall. It's the 10-year anniversary of the product, and it's really a remarkable product. It's designed it follows the coaching methodology that Paul and some of his partners had back in the day, which was to go in and really ask a series of questions about how the business is doing things. Based on the answers to those questions, come back with an OML level and a series of recommendations that were prioritized on how to improve the business. And what thing, you can't do everything at once, so what things should you focus on that will have the greatest impact on your business? Today, that's still how Sleek works. You go in and you answer about 150 questions. You do it with your leadership team around a roundtable. Takes about 3-4 hours to go through the initial assessment. When you're done, it'll tell you what's your OML, and it's looking at 5 areas of your business, and there's 40 different traits within there, and it'll tell you based on your scores what should you work on first and what's going to make the biggest bang for the buck impact on your business. It even includes some white papers and videos and all sorts of tools to help you implement those things. So it's really designed to be an online coaching as a service, a software as a service product. And today, 100% of the Evolve community is on Sleek. They all benchmark with us too. So when you get into those rooms and into the peer groups, they're really good discussions about it, what you should be focusing in on for improvement. Um, but Sleek measures OML, and then it'll track your improvement as you implement change in your business. You go in and update your answers because they change, right? I now maybe I went from not charging on assessments to today I'm charging 90+% of the time. Well, you're gonna improve your OML score if that's the case. So you go back in periodically and you update your answers, and it's a living, breathing OML coach for you. But our data is pretty strong that lower OML is going to really struggle, and profitability is going to be a challenge, as are a bunch of other aspects. And you can improve your OML and do the right things right. You've got a much better shot, no guarantee, but much better shot of being profitable and successful and all the good things that come with that.
What can you give us any statistics or data about what some of these best-in-class companies are capable of doing? For example, organic growth. What percentage organic growth do we typically see with a best-in-class company? What's our EBITDA percentages, normalized EBITDA percentages, that sort of thing?
Yeah, last quarter, I can tell you that our cutoff to get into best in class for MSPs was just over 17%. I think the average was 23.3% adjusted EBITDA. And recurring revenue growth rate, which is really it's a net score. So you're taking your recurring revenue growth minus your recurring revenue attrition. And the net for the best in class was about 21%. Bottom quartile was under 10%. It was about 9.5%. What's interesting when you peel that data apart is that the bottom quartile folks are actually adding more new logos than the best in class are adding on a quarterly basis. The difference is the best in class are adding larger agreements, and they're adding much higher gross margin agreements. So bottom quartile gross margin on new agreements is about 42% service gross margin. And best in class gross margin on managed services is on new agreements is about 10 points higher. It's about 52.5. So you're going to grow much faster, and you're going to be much more successful when you're selling agreements at 52.5% gross margin compared to 42. It doesn't sound like it's that much different, but it's actually 20% better. And when you factor in your cost of sales into the mix, you're using up awful lot of the cost of sale is using up most of the gross margin generated by that managed service agreement on the bottom quartile. Best in class still has plenty left to pay the bills and to have some left for profit, etc. So, so it matters more. The revenue is certainly important, but it matters even more the quality of the revenue that you're bringing in.
Amazing. We've talked about benchmarking. We've talked about Sleek. We've talked a little bit about chart of accounts. Tell us a little bit more about Evolve and some of the peer group stuff that's out there.
Yeah, Evolve is an unbelievable community. They used to be HTG, as I said, that Arlen founded years and years ago, and he sold the business to ConnectWise a few years before Service Leadership was acquired by ConnectWise. But the idea by ConnectWise was this community is so impactful, and it helps these partners so much with their businesses and to grow that we want to be part of it. And ConnectWise already had IT Nation, IT Nation Connect, the most famous event of IT Nation every November, as I'm sure you're familiar. I'm sure you've been there. But it really made sense to acquire the peer groups and grow them. And so today, Evolve has different levels of groups, Evolve 1, 2, and 3. And Service Leadership actually had 6 peer groups when we were acquired as well, 4 MSP groups and 2 VAR groups. And we still have those groups. They have a different content format than Evolve does a little bit, and little different structure. We're in those meetings even more providing content. But all of it's under Evolve now. And so every quarter those groups meet, and the Evolve groups meet Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and on Wednesday they have what's called Community Day, where they can either stick around if they were a Monday, Tuesday member, or if they're a Thursday, Friday, they come early. And on Wednesdays, everybody gets together in common areas and listens to some really amazing content. And that content can cover leadership and sales and customer experience and all sorts of different things that are really topical for every MSP out there. I speak at a lot of those community days, and then a couple of my colleagues and I also go into the Evolve groups one by one for an hour at a crack and give them an update on the latest industry update, the latest numbers, and what good looks like these days. And we also talk about whatever else is on their mind and what challenges they're having. And because we deal with so many MSPs, we're just in a really good position to be able to provide guidance on different issues that they're dealing with. And those groups are just amazing. You mentioned the accountability aspect and talked about Vistage as well. As a CEO, I was actually in a Vistage type group, and I was in a service leadership peer group because the outcomes are so radically different. The Vistage group was great because I would get together with CEOs from my area and really get an understanding of what was going on in different industries, and that was great for stimulating ideas and different ways to think about the business. But it also kept me close to the local business community and wasn't terrible for sales and growing the business either. You got to know some other CEOs. So I really enjoyed that and got a lot out of that. The industry specific peer groups, because you're getting together with companies that you're not competing with, and they're all facing the same industry challenges that you are, those are just such an unbelievable sounding board for your strategy and for different technology that you're thinking of deploying and all the other things that come along in the life of an executive at an MSP. And today, Evolve even has subgroups for service managers and for sales and for security and COO and CFO groups that meet. And so as the industry has matured and grown, we now are seeing much larger organizations that have many more layers of leadership and other challenges. And so there's groups that are specifically designed for them. So I can't recommend getting in a peer group strong enough. if somebody really wants to figure out how to improve their business and frankly, improve their life. You're going to learn a lot in the Evolve groups. They get into legacy planning and they get into um, M&A and all sorts of things related to life after the MSP. And so you will get so much more out of being in a peer group than you put in, and you'll put in a lot, but it's just an unbelievable experience for you.
I completely agree, and I hope all of you techies out there listening, um, again, it's hard to know what you don't know, and joining these peer groups will open your eyes to many of the different things that you don't know. Peter, you've mentioned the word challenges a bunch of times in that last conversation, and so I'm wondering what you see are the key challenges and risks that are facing MSPs today, and how that differs from 5-10 years ago.
I think I would put it I'll answer your question, but maybe in a roundabout way, Jeff. I would also put in their opportunities. And so the business model, one of the exciting things with running an MSP is that the business is constantly in a state of change. Now, for some, they might not describe that as exciting. They might describe it in other
Terrifying,
terms,
right?
right? Um, but it really is. It's one of the,
Exhausting.
yeah,
Exhausting is the one. Yeah.
yeah. And so, yes, it's all of those things. It can be exhausting. It can be stressful. Um, it can be really difficult. But it can also be incredibly challenging and stimulating and rewarding, all of the above. And so I think that's why so many of us love the space is that constant challenge that comes with it. And part of that is the reinvention of the model. So over time, there's been different periods of time where I've continued to hear that there won't be a need for MSPs. I remember going back to 2010, I remember the first industry event I went to, and might have actually also been a CompTIA event. And I was new to the industry. I was just trying to get my arms around what this industry is, what kind of opportunity there is, et cetera. And as I was at this event, sitting and listening to veteran MSP owners. And at that time, the MSP space was pretty new, but the outsourced technology space had been there for a while and break fix and other models. But listening to them and listening to speakers, it was really depressing because everybody was predicting the demise of the industry over the
The
next 2, 3,
the
4 years.
clouds are coming. The clouds are coming.
Cloud. Every vendor is talking about how cloud is going to eliminate the need for support and everything's going to work perfectly. And
Oh, yeah.
everything's going to be harmonious. And Microsoft is getting rid of the SBS server. And how will we possibly move past this? And right, well, of course, that was insanely ludicrous. And the industry not only needed help with all of the everything cloud. Not only did it not make all of these challenges go away, it added complexity for the average business and the average user, which means you need to be able to support it. And yeah, you got to adapt your business some. Security comes along, and today I get asked the difference between an MSP and an MSSP. And my answer is, I have no idea what the difference is. I don't know how you can be an MSP today and not be delivering robust managed security solutions. To me, they're one and the same at this point. And so that's a pivot, right? And we went through a significant pivot in the late 2007 to 2012, moving to RMM and getting away from putting bodies on site and being able to scale the business as a national model and service customers who are not 15 minutes away from your office or all the things that people would design their businesses around, right? Um, so we see this constant reinvention, and today I get asked about it a lot with AI. And I was at a conference and listening to some folks talking, and AI is going to get rid of all of us in the next couple of years. Nobody's going to need help desk. I'm like, guys, this is cloud all over again. It's going to change the model, but it's going to provide all sorts of opportunities for every MSP out there to deliver their services in an even more efficient way. And are users going to all of a sudden not need help with technology and integration of systems and all the things that they struggle with? And is does anybody really believe that security is going to become less of an issue over the next 5 years or so, or 3 to 5, 10 years? I mean, it's going to be more and more opportunity, but it won't be easy. It'll be like it's been over the years where there's a reinvention and a need to constantly be looking at your business and your model and making sure that you're doing things in the right way and that you're continuously improving your organization.
You mentioned AI, so I have to ask, are you seeing managed services firms turning towards AI, to supporting AI, to providing managed AI services at this point?
We are, I think, if I had to look more broadly at it, I think today where we're at is firms are really more looking at, MSPs are really more looking today at how can I implement this in my organization? How can we build? ConnectWise talks about hyper automation, which is an umbrella term for AI and robotic process automation and workflow automation, et cetera. Um, and I think today most MSPs are focused in on building out RPA and workflow within their own service organization. And they're really focused on taking advantage of the efficiency gains that they're starting to see there. Our prediction is that in the next 18 to 24 months, that will continue to really boom. You're going to see a lot more opportunities for RPA, and you're going to see additional products like Sidekick from ConnectWise that will automate a lot of things within your help desk and other parts of the organization. It's going to be a radical move in the next 12 months. I think after that, the next 12, 18, 24 months, at that point, I think MSPs are going to be really focused on how do I take this out as a service to my customers? And so you can't wait too long. Your customers will need this help soon. But first, get your own house in order. Make sure that you're really taking advantage of the margin gains that you should pick up and that you're really picking up that additional efficiency. I wouldn't try to do two things at once. I would focus in on that. Once you feel comfortable, like you've really got some value to add, then I would suggest you look at both, how do you do it from a project standpoint? And second, how do you look at it from in addition to your managed service offering? And the it might seem odd to work in AI consulting or other assistance on things like that into your managed service offering. But I remember the first time one of my large customers asked me if we would support this thing called Microsoft Teams, and to which I had asked, "What's that?" And this is a very, very early adopter firm, and so we went back and looked at it and said, "Well, we'll do some project work on it, but we're not going to build this into the agreement we've got with you. This won't be a standard thing. It's such a different product than what we're supporting for you today." Well, today, I mean, is there anybody out there that wouldn't support Teams in their help desk agreements? And so I think this will be the same kind of thing. You'll see this as an evolution of the space.
Very cool. We're coming to the end of our time, but I have to ask you about mistakes. I'm a huge fan of learning from them, and I'm wondering, what are the most common mistakes that you've seen? What are the most interesting mistakes that you've seen MSPs make, and what might we learn from them?
Oh gosh, if to answer this question, I really have to reflect on myself. Before I talk about mistakes I see with other companies, there would be mistakes that we made over time. And I think these are probably not uncommon. One of them is thinking that an acquisition will will take care of a gap that we're struggling on service delivery and these guys seem to be good at it, or we need a good leader to manage this part of our business. And I really like this guy at this other company, or maybe we don't have enough. We're struggling to add and retain employees, and so we're going to buy this other business so we pick up a bunch of employees. What I learned in the times that we tried to do that was that you need to fix the foundation of your house before you build a second and third floor on it. If you try to do acquisitions, they're not a balm that heals issues in your business. It's the opposite. They'll show you where the cracks are in your business really rapidly. So rather than trying to fix things through acquisition, I learned that you're better off to really look inward, figure out what do we need to do to fix things operationally in our sales model, whatever it happens to be. When we're doing things really well, really high OML, then we're in a good position to go out and do an acquisition and integrate them in. But don't try to fix your operation by buying somebody that you think complements or fixes things. Not that it never works, but it was something we learned the hard way is not the best idea. I think another thing is over the years, I had plenty of debates with Paul Dipple where I was firmly believed I was right and passionately articulated those viewpoints to him. And Paul was really good at showing me the data and saying, you may be right or think you're right, but here's the data. Here's what really works, and here's why. And um, too often I chose to ignore that and listen to those working for me or my gut or whatever. And yeah, you got to trust your gut, but the data is the data. So to me, it's an unbelievable benefit to this industry that we are able to have objective data that we can provide. Take advantage of it. I don't know too many other industries that you can get the kind of data on what drives success the way that you can in our space. So don't fight the data, don't ignore it. Pay attention to it and use it to improve your operation. Uh, so I think those would be a couple of the big ones. I think the organizations um, where the MSP, the other one I think was a little less of an issue for us because I came in as a professional manager and not as a technologist. But one of the things I see limiting a lot of MSP's growth opportunity is the owner can't let go of doing day-to-day tech work. And when you get to a certain size, I would say 6 to 8, 9 employees or larger, you start to need to be a better manager and leader and business executive than a tech. And so you're going to go through these stages in growing your business where you're going to need to wear every hat in the business. Then you're going to take a hat or two off, and you'll be focused in on maybe sales and not as much on the tech side, or maybe the opposite if you have a partner that does some sales. But just really recognize that as you're growing your business, you need to delegate. You need to bring in people who are going to be able to take those things off of your plate. Otherwise, the business won't be able to grow. And the MSPs that are really growing today that I see on this upward trajectory, they get that. And it's not always, you may love doing day-to-day tech support. That may be your favorite thing, part of the day is solving a problem for a customer. But if your team or your customers, as you grow your MSP, needs to rely on you to solve those problems, you're probably not going to be able to grow it to be very big. And that's okay. If you decide that I like having a 6, 7, 8 employee MSP, and it's a lifestyle business for me, and that's what I want to continue to do, more power to you. But if you want to grow it and maximize your opportunity in the space, you're going to need to delegate and bring in others who can complement the things that you're really good at.
Really great advice. Is there anything else that you'd like to add at this point? We've covered a lot.
I think the biggest thing to circle back is any MSP owner that wants to improve um, and and for most of the MSP owners that I know, a significant part of their personal wealth is tied up in the success of their business. A lot of their retirement is linked to it. So take advantage of the opportunity. It's real. We'll be coming out in early June with our annual profitability report, and we're already working on the data. And we've had 4 record years in a row in the industry for financial performance. These have been the best 4 years ever in our space. It's the golden ages of the managed services space. So if you're performing at a great level today, awesome, keep doing it. Figure out how you can take it to the next level. If you're not performing well, and our data today tells us that about 25 to 28% of MSPs are losing money. Um, Nobody should be losing money. This is the best time ever for the industry. So regardless of which camp you're in, my advice is join a peer group, get a hold of Evolve, figure out what group is the best fit for you based on the size of company and what you're trying to achieve. There's different options, as we said, but get in a group. You'll hold yourself more accountable, your members will, and you'll learn a lot every quarter, and it'll accelerate your improvement in the business, your growth, all those things. Um, you'll look back, I'm confident, just based on the experience I had, you'll look back and really be appreciative that you did it.
All right, we've reached the end of our time. Peter, thank you so much. This speaking with you has really been a pleasure. The knowledge that you have and the experience that you bring is just amazing. And I sure hope every MSP in the country who's not already a part of service leadership listens to this and understands some of the things that we've talked about today.
Well,
So
thanks for
thank
having
you
me on,
again.
Jeff. It was
It's
my pleasure. Anytime.
my pleasure.